Good evening, Jay Goldstein.
Good evening, everyone. Mia Hilton, CB9.
Evening. This is Shampa Chanda from Board of Standards and Appeals.
Welcome.
Good evening, Vice Chair.
Oh, good evening, Jay. How are
How are
you?
you? Good.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Baptiste. Did I pronounce your
Good
name
evening. How are you
correctly?
doing? Absolutely. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. We really appreciate you showing up this evening with us.
No problem. So just so
All right,
I
so we're just gonna-
understand, I will
Oh.
start it off and then I'll just exit the meeting. I don't need to stay around for the rest of the board meeting, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just thank you for coming. We just wanted to get a little bit of, information with regards to the board standards and appeals, just in terms of the work you do, your roles, your interactions with community boards. And I think that'll be fantastic.
Okay. Thank you.
From my standpoint, you've invited a very pleasant and wonderful commissioner and vice chair.
Oh, thank you.
Not to kiss up, it's true.
I used to give these presentations many moons ago, but so it's been a while. I do enjoy. I used to be a community board member myself, so
Oh, okay.
yeah, my local community board in Queens.
Well, you see, now that you told us that, we may invite you to come back and do definitely something for our full board as well.
Sure, if it's possible, yeah, definitely. I don't have a problem with that.
Much appreciated. All right, we're just going to give a few more minutes for a few more people to join in, and we'll begin the agenda.
And I guess I should be able to share my screen, right? Because I have a brief PowerPoint that I would like to go through, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Mia, would you be able to allow her to share her screen?
Oh, yes, I've made your co-host.
Me, co-host?
Yes,
Okay.
so you're able to share.
Do you expect me, do you expect any question or answers that you would want me to answer? I mean, do you want me to just walk through the presentation and that's it, or you're going to open the floor for questions?
Yeah, I think you can go through your presentation, and then maybe at the end, if you have a few minutes, if there are a couple of questions from from any of the participants, if you would entertain them, that would be great.
Am I in the right meeting?
Actually, I think you actually in the ULURP meeting, so I think you're the environmental protection, right?
Yeah, I clicked the link for environmental protection. I don't know how I ended up here.
Ms. Westerdahl, was the link you clicked, was it from the email to your committee, or where'd you get the link from? Oh, I don't see her. I'm going to give about another minute or so. I believe most of the committee members are here. I'm just doing a quick check.
Who are the committee members?
1 second, I'll call the roll and we'll announce all the committee members. Actually, just as a housekeeping item, one of the things we're trying to do as well. If we could have all those members of the committee, if you are able to, if you could just change your name, just so that way you have your name plus ULURP committee member behind it.
I would have liked to attended the Environmental Protection Committee meeting. I don't think that it's fair that you have these meetings running at the same time. There's 30 days in a month. There's enough time to stagger them. I wanted to go to the Environmental Protection Committee meeting. Can we stop that, doing that? Isn't that against the open meetings law?
That's not a violation.
Yes, but you barely get enough attendance as it is at a lot of these meetings.
Ooh.
And then you double them up, you know, that people can't attend the meetings that they want to. I don't, again,
Right.
it's 30 days. We can't understand why we have to do that.
Very briefly, and I'll address this very briefly. We try and have all of the committee meetings so that way, to the best of our ability, they all occur before the executive committee, because we would like to have all those reports at the executive committee. Executive committee is the 3rd week, and then the board meets on the 4th, which means for us to try and accomplish that, that means we need to try and get most of them in those first 2 weeks of the month, which is the reason why we double up on most of those days, because obviously the board would lose Fridays as well. So we really only have about 8 days or so in terms of which we can have those meetings.
Yes, but you
So
can have
that's part of the
meetings,
reason why we double up.
but you can have meetings the last week in the month after the general board meeting.
We could, but
And
technically those committee meetings are supposed to be, but then the board can't act on those meetings because the board has already met. So we really
No,
try
it
and make
would,
sure that they go in the
it
first
would
place.
be for the following
All right.
meeting. It would be for the following meeting.
Understood.
And you could stagger
That's
the
currently the way we're operating. Okay. Listen, I apologize, but we definitely want to make sure that we're respectful of the time, because especially we do have a guest who's here this evening as well. I think we have a critical mass of the members. Actually, let me just very quickly call the roll. Do we have Suki Chong with us?
Yes, here.
Thank you, Suki. Do we have Felice Robertson?
Yes, present.
Thank you, Felice. Lorianne Wolfley. Do we have Lorianne? Lorianne, are you there? Yeah, I think I see her, but she might be having audio issues. Nicola Cox. Nicola, are you here? I don't see Nicola. John Craver. Is John present? Okay. Esteban Jerome. Esteban, are you here?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, are you here? I see you as well. Okay, I see you waving. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members present. We have a quorum. I'm calling the meeting to order. The time is now 7:08 p.m. I want to welcome everyone for joining us this evening for our ULURP Land Use Committee meeting. My name is Fred Baptiste. I currently serve as the chair of CB9. As we have not yet assigned a chair for the committee, I am chairing this committee in the interim. I hope to have a chair installed hopefully in the very near future. So once that happens, I will make the announcement before the board, to the committee as well, and they will assume the administration of the committee and all meetings going forward. But once again, I want to welcome everyone for coming. And I think it's only very fitting to say that I think as this is the first meeting, I think one of the things that we definitely need to recognize is the hard work of the ULURP committee, especially with respect to the 960 Franklin Avenue application. It was definitely a very challenging process. It calls for a lot of resources. It calls for a lot of time and the commitment of the members. And this committee, I want to say, stood out and stood tall. So I want to thank everyone for all the work that you put into it, for the way you approached it. It was thoughtful, it was respectful, it was engaging. And I want to thank everyone, all the grizzled veterans who I see here. And I also want to welcome all the new members. You are truly on a very strong committee, one of the prides of CB9. All right. At this time, we are going to now move on in the agenda. We're going to go on to item 2. There's going to be a slight amendment. Before we hear from the BSA, the applicant for the BSA submission, we actually have with us this evening from the Board of Standards and Appeal. I butchered the title, I'm sorry. Board of Standards and Appeals, is that correct?
Yes, Board of Standards and Appeals. Right.
Okay, who's going to give us a little bit of background with regards to the agency, what they do, how their process works, and what their connections are with community boards, and how we work together with respect to those applications. Ms. Shanda, am I getting correct?
Yes.
We have Ms. Shanda, who's with us this evening. Ms. Shanda, you have the floor. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
And thank you very much. Thank you, Community Board 9, for inviting BSA to give a brief presentation. I've made a slide PowerPoint presentation just to kind of walk you through some of the issues, and I'll take some questions after that. So I think I'm allowed to do screen share. And here we go. Okay, so this is the Board of Standards and Appeals brief presentation to the Community Board. So just in terms of what is Board of Standards and Appeal, I think it is important to understand that this board was created in 1916 at the same time the New York City zoning resolution was created. This is an independent board that grants relief from the zoning resolutions and zoning resolution and other development codes. It also prevents, the purpose of creating this board was to prevent unconstitutional taking claim against the city and to allow for reasonable development to occur on properties that would otherwise be undevelopable. And so the board considers and grants certain use and bulk waivers from the zoning resolution. The board consists of 5 commissioners, and it must include a licensed engineer, a licensed architect, and an urban planner. I am the urban planner on this. I'm the vice chair, and we have the chair, vice chair, and 3 commissioners. In terms of what the board has the authority to review, board has the authority to vary the regulations of the New York City zoning resolution. It has the ability to modify the New York State multiple dwelling law, waive or modify fire codes, flood regulations, and building codes. It also has the authority to waive New York State General City Law 35 and 36. These are basically developments that would happen on map streets. Not much that happens in your commuter districts, but if you have any questions, I will be more than happy to discuss it. Interprets appeals of zoning resolution. These are cases which would be brought cases before the DOB or fire department, and somebody appeals the interpretation of these regulations of the code or the zoning resolution, and BSA would be interpreting these cases. It also permits vested rights. So oftentimes as the New York City zoning regulations change or the mapping actions results in a development that is kind of caught in between 2 different zoning regulations or zoning districts, BSA has the ability to help investing or granting the construction to continue under the new regulation, under the old regulation, but in the new zoning regulations or zoning district. It also has the authority to grant special permits that are authorized by the zoning resolution. So here is just a quick breakdown of applications that the Board of Standards and Appeals has received since 1998 to date. As you can see, a good percentage, about 25% of the applications are from the borough of Brooklyn. So of the, and of these 2,649 cases, about 29 of these cases are related to specifically your commuter district 9. This is from the data I pulled together from 1998 to present. Now, of these applications in Brooklyn specifically, I just want to show you what is the breakdown of these applications by the type of app cases that I just briefly went over. As you can see, nearly 50% of these applications are what we call special permit applications. These are cases that would allow use or a bulk modification to the underlying regulations to allow a school or a daycare facility, or allow for a parking modification for an ambulatory care facility, or a modification of bulk regulations in some cases. For mostly one sees in Brooklyn, like single family homes being enlarged in very specific commuter districts, and I think that is commuter districts 11 and 15. Then the next tranche of cases that we get in Brooklyn are what we call SOC, special order calendar. These are actually extensions of terms of cases that's been before the Board of Standards and Appeals since its inception. So these are actions that were granted way back when, and they continue to be under the BSA jurisdiction, and they have to come to BSA for a renewal of terms or amendments to prior amendments to the project and such. Then the next tranche, which is about a little more than 10% of those cases, are about variance cases. These are variances to allow a school or a house of worship, affordable housing, or for-profit development. These are, again, the ones that I think a lot of people ask questions like, what is it and why are we doing this? So I can go over that a little bit more in detail. And the others are cases that actually either got withdrawn or dismissed kind of thing. And the rest, a very small percentage, is what we call appeals cases. These are cases where, like I said, it's an interpretive appeal of zoning resolution or code or related things. Or it could be what is called what I had mentioned earlier, New York State New York State General City Law for building on the bed of street, mapped street, and such. If I'm going too fast, stop me. I can always go back to these charts also. And here is kind of a brief breakdown of what the special permit case, special permits are. There are about over 50 special permit zoning resolution, there are about over 50 special permits that are in the zoning resolution that allow use or bulk modifications. And these are, many of these special permits have findings. And these findings, we look towards the neighborhood characters, and I will talk to it as to how the community really becomes a valuable part of these review process. Another one I had mentioned, extension of term, and in most of these cases, what we have before us are gas stations, automobile repairs. Most of these extension of term tends to be that. Okay. So here are some example of some of the special permit cases that we recently approved. To the left is a special permit that was granted for a school building in the borough of Bronx. They needed there were several modifications that they needed, and this was a result of it. To the right, like I said, extension of terms are typically for gas stations, automotive repair. We know these are not the best of neighbors, but this board and prior boards have made every effort to ensure that these uses, while they're very valuable and integral to the local community and the business, it is responsive and respectful of its neighborhood. So that would mean improvements and making sure the site is clear. And many of these cases, we do look at the board, we do look at the community board to give recommendations. Are these sites in compliance with prior regulations? Are they in violations of any sort? Are there any improvements that would be needed? And so we do listen to community boards on these and rely on them, as they are, as I always like to say, they are the eyes and the ears of the community. And last but not least, variance cases. So variance cases, these are basically, as I mentioned, it is to allow for reasonable development to occur on properties that would otherwise not be developable. So what you see in the graphics is a case where the site is, as it is, the developable site is very narrow. It's, let's say, it's like 11 feet wide or something like that. Now, under the regulations, it would not be able to build on that site. So in this particular case, the board reviewed it to determine how much of a hardship there was, whether this was a self-created hardship or not. So how much of, whether this site is unique, that is one of the findings. Would it hinder any reasonable development? Would the underlying regulations hinder any reasonable development of the site, on the site, which is basically the financial hardship of the project? Will such a development alter the essential character of the neighborhood? And was it a self-created hardship? And the other one is the request that the applicant has posed before the board. Is it the minimal request to get a reasonable return? And that would be harmonious to the community. And so those are the many factors that the board looks at. And these 5 findings have to be met in order for the board to make a determination on these cases. So I just want to go over quickly the BSA application timeline. So what happens is when the application is submitted to the board, the staff reviews the application to make sure all the required items that are stated in the BSA website have been submitted. Then within 3 business days, the applicant of record, which is is required to forward a copy of the applications to the community board, to the borough president, to the local city council member, and to administrative offices of DOB and Department of City Planning, Buildings and City Planning. Then at the board, a project manager is assigned to this project. Upon receiving this application, the project manager's responsibility is to review and make sure the application is complete. Meanwhile, at the community board, once the community board receives it, community board may hold a hearing or may waive the review process. And community board has 60 days to hold a hearing and make a recommendation. Now, once the recommendation is made, it is sent to the board. We often, we do like to hear what the community board has to say before we vote or take a determination. So sometimes we do get recommendations that are received after 60 days. We do accept them, but I would recommend don't make a habit of it. And we do recognize sometimes timing and other things do not facilitate a 60-day hearing. And at the board, what happens is the application is being reviewed. And once all the information has been provided, the commissioner carefully evaluates the applications and discusses it at the public hearing. At the public hearing, Board of Standards public hearing, the community board and the borough president recommendations are announced at the hearing. The commissioners during this review process can request for additional information from the applicant. I also want to point out that all of our hearings are open to public. And during public hearing, we have 2 parts. One is the executive session and one is the public hearing. Executive session is where only the commissioners are deliberating amongst themselves and everybody can listen in on the discussion. The public hearing is held where everybody can participate in it. Applicant presents the application, responds to the questions that the commission has raised, and the public at large can, specific to that project, can discuss, raise concerns, and they have 3 minutes each. Each public member has 3 minutes to make their case. So that's kind of how it works. All our information, as I said, all the hearings are open to public. Anybody can attend. And because of the pandemic, and that takes me to the, to the next slide as to what is the role of the community board in terms of the recommendations. As I said, for amendments and extensions, the kind of recommendation that is most helpful is the recommendations that speak to the neighborhood character and impacts, and if a project is compliant with prior conditions that were granted by the board. In terms of variances and special permits, these have findings. So recommendations that are responding directly to the findings are very helpful, and specifically neighborhood character, impacts, unique conditions, other developments in the area that we may not be aware of, that you are aware of, bringing those to our to the board's attention. So here is our BSA website. This is the link that's on the, this is the link that you can go to where you can have access to the Board of Standards and Appeal website. There you can find out all our upcoming hearing notices, when the next hearing is, as our next hearing is next Monday. Our hearings are held on Mondays and then it also has the entire BSA calendar. You can also view all our hearings. I think the hearings since 1914 are on our BSA YouTube. So you can go and listen in on these videos and hear how these discussions progressed. If you want to review resolutions, I believe they're also the resource center of BSA can help you dig up a BSA resolution. Should you have any questions regarding the process or a specific application, we strongly recommend that your district manager or the chair, and I know each community board has the role of district manager and community board varies, chair varies. So whoever is the point person in reaching out to the agencies, please reach out to our executive director, Carlo Costanza, and the email is written there, is ccostanza, at bsa.nyc.gov, or our deputy director, Tony Matias. I believe, Mr. Baptiste, you reached out to Tony. You've been exchanging emails with her. Her email is tmatias at bsa.nyc.gov. The general BSA office number is 212-386-0009. You can call. Also, I want to let you know that if anybody wants to submit any comments on any applications, you can submit it individually, you can mail it, but we are going paperless, and pretty much all our applications are being filed online, including any public comments. So there is a link in here which allows you to submit public comments. It says under resources, public comments. You can submit public comments for a specific case, and we do take every one of those comments very carefully. We do review each and every comments that we receive. So that's kind of in a nutshell what our agency does. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner, thank you so much for this presentation. Okay, at this time, we will take a few questions for the commissioner. Mia, can you? I'm just going to take speakers. We'll take a couple of names.
Do you want me to stop sharing the video? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. All right. Hold on one second. I'm going to take a quick list. All right, Ms. Boyd, I do see you. Hold on one second. I'll call you in a second.
I see Ms. Boyd, I see Esteban, and I see Suki and Ms. Barnes.
Suki and Ms. Barnes. All right, and unfortunately for time constraints, we're gonna have to cut it after Ms. Barnes. Okay, Alicia, go ahead. You have the floor.
You say you take the community's comments very seriously. However, you have a track record of approving these variances, especially when it comes to bulk. You have like a 95% approval rate. So how do you justify such a large percentage of approval rate, making it almost like the moment that I decide I want to change the bulk and shape of my property, and go to the Board of Standards and Appeals, I have a 95% chance of it passing. So how do you justify that with the idea that you listen to the public very seriously and take into consideration their voices?
For asking that question. I think there are several parts to it, so I'm going to break it up into one part that I think it's very critical, and I think it's sometimes a little complicated to explain, but do bear with me. Board tries to be consistent in its deliberation so that its action cannot be deemed arbitrary. And the
Or
board
capricious.
or capricious, exactly. Now, the board may try, understanding the community board's input is a very important component of the board. The board may try to address community board's concerns by asking for further analysis in coordination with expert sister agencies. There's a lot of coordination that goes back and forth between the expert agencies. Now, even though you may believe, you may see that the outcome is not what the community board desired, it does not mean that serious consideration was not given where it is applicable to the findings. Community board's concerns and recommendations, they help the board in shaping the projects. Applications are often, many times, I would say majority of times, they are modified. There are statutes, there are case laws that guide the boards, and the board in its deliberation has to follow these clear-cut guidance that are stated in the statute and the case laws. And so that means there are limitations to BSA's jurisdiction in certain cases. And there are situations that board does have discretion, and where it does apply it. And another thing to keep in mind is that board has to be consistent when it's applying certain methodologies or policies. We review each case on a case-by-case basis, and the facts that are provided, they must meet the findings for each of the specific cases. Now, if they don't, then they don't, and they don't meet the findings, and therefore they would be denied. But if they are able to make the findings, and these hearings are held for a long period of times, it's not one hearing and we approve it. It is held, they go through 3-4 rounds of hearings, many rounds of hearings. And at each hearing, the commissioner is asking and verifying, are they meeting, are the applicants meeting the facts and the findings? And if those are being met, the board would consider it with modifications where needed, to make it more consistent with the findings and facts, and be, so like I said, it's kind of difficult to state it. Yes, if you look at it, it says 95%, but when you look at what was submitted and what has been approved, you would see often cases they are not the same. There have been a lot of modifications. Oftentimes in cases, the board will ask them to drop some of the asks. Someone comes with a list of 10, we would say, no, you don't need it, you don't need this, you can do without it based on the findings, based on the project can be reshaped, you can do away with many of these things. They have to meet the genuine hardship of the site. If there is a hardship on the site, then the question becomes, how much of a reasonable development is feasible? And if there is a hardship that has been proven, then that reasonableness is a lot of massaging of the project based on facts, based on findings.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Next, we have Esteban.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. My question is about how BSA interacts or either coordinates or not coordinates or whatever with Department of City Planning, and how I noticed here that there's like testimony that they submit as well. So how do you weigh city planning, which at least in our case tends to not be on the same side that we're on majority of fights when it comes to land use. So what kind of weight do you give them versus the community, and like just how do they interact with your, because I know you're an independent agency, but obviously there's some sort of collaboration there. So
I think it's up to city planning to weigh in on Board of Standards and Appeals cases. If they want to give cite any recommendations, it's up to them. By and large, they don't weigh in on our on variance cases unless it is glaringly something that would be inconsistent with the larger city planning policies that they have in foot. They would notify us, but by and large, most of the time when we hear Department of City Plannings, it is mostly to clarify what the intent of the zoning was and how the zoning regulation was supposed to be implemented. And we mostly hear Department of City Planning in the cases of interpretive appeals. But on various cases, very few we do hear from city planning saying this would be contrary to what the city planning is considering or something like that. But by and large, that's our interpret. And if we do need some clarification, now the board cannot reach out once a case is in process, the board does not discuss it with anybody. So it would be at a staff level, the discussion would happen with city planning.
then just really quickly, when you make a decision, are those appealable by like an Article 78 or is it like a final decision once it's gone
They
through?
are appealed. There are Article 78, but it has to be within 30 days.
Within 30 days. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, one more.
30 days or 60 days. I forget the exact date, but there is a time clock.
And on the 60 days that you said that you sometimes will accept recommendation from the community board after 60 days, is that like anywhere in the charter in the same way that it is for when we do it for like a ULURP application, or is this like a totally different sort of thing?
Accepting anything after 60 days, it's not there. It's just our policy. It's this board's policy.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Suki, you have a question?
Yeah, this was just a procedural question for you, or maybe for you and Fred. If a community board waives its requirement to hold a hearing, do we need to vote to say that we're waiving the requirement, or do we just sort of waive it by default because we didn't know, we forgot,
Well,
whatever?
so what typically happens specifically at this board, if community board has not submitted its recommendation, sometimes we do get a letter from the board saying we are waiving because they just don't think it's an issue. They don't want to discuss it. They just kind of say that we are waiving it. They don't want to take a vote for whatever myriads of reasons. And they put it in a formal writing. And because keep in mind, these are reflected in the Board of Standards and Appeals resolution. The community board's vote is reflected in the resolution. So if the community board takes a decision to waive, it's reflected in the resolution. But if, let's say, the community board has not responded to the board within 60 days, often the staff will reach out to the community board and ask, do you plan to hold a hearing? Did you hold? And we will try to push as much as we can to get the board to the community board to hold a vote and deliberate, unless they don't want to, right? And I mean, there has to be reasonableness of the time. We won't hold our hearing when everything seems pretty cut and dry, just to hear the community board for 4, 5, 6, 7 months. That's not fair to the applicant when they have met the burden of proof. So, but
Okay.
mostly in controversial cases, we do try to hear from the community board and give them the time.
But
But-
there's always an
Thank you.
open public hearing anyway.
There is an open pub. So if the community board, let's say, misses, so after 60 days, let's say you hold your hearing and you vote on it, you send it to the board, and that is reflected in the resolution that the community board voted. And we do
Okay.
take that in the, because until we, so there is a process where the applications are being heard. And then when the application seems complete, and it has
Okay.
responded to all the facts and findings, at the commissioner may choose to close the application. And at that time, it doesn't help to get the community board's recommendation. We should get it before the application closes.
Okay,
I
and I do
clear?
have a question for you for maybe after the applicant presents, if you'll still be around.
I wasn't planning to be around, but hold on.
Yeah, if there's a question,
You
just
can
because
continue.
if there's a question, we can direct that to BSA separately, I think.
Yeah.
So if there's any follow-up questions, we can direct that to BSA separately.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because it's a live matter before her, so I wouldn't want her to have to weigh in on something that's going to be a matter that's live.
That's also
Unless
because
it's a
there's no
technical-
chat. That's also because there's no chat and we can't talk to other people in this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Barnes, you had a question or comment?
Yes, thank you for being here, Board of Standards and Appeals. I'm looking at the agenda and I see, yes, the applicant will be presenting subsequent to you, so apparently they have an application in, is that correct? Ms. Chandler?
I believe so. I cannot speak to the application.
But I would think that was the process, and that's why you're here. The applicant,
No,
according to
let me
your,
clarify. No, let me clarify. We have an application that is here because as a board, we have not typically dealt with a lot of BSA applications. The office staff said it might be something good for us to at least reach out to BSA, get some background in terms of, what the process is, what the board's role would be with respect to that, and whatever the timelines are.
okay,
So
Well,
the
that's
commissioner was
wonderful.
kind enough to come and give us that.
oh, that's
So
wonderful.
we will have a conversation. We will have a presentation by the applicant. After that, if there are any other questions.
Okay, you didn't let me finish my thought. You always tend to.
Well,
interrupt us.
because I was trying to give the process in terms of why the commissioner is here and the relation between that and the application. But go
Okay,
ahead, finish your
so
point.
based on her presentation, the process is, again, and you clarified that you have received the application because she said 3 days after the application is given to you, the borough president, the council, and on and on and on, like Erica Badu. Will that application be given to the community? Is that part of the process, Chanda? Will it be uploaded tonight so that we could see this application for this variant?
Let me just go back to the process.
I can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, let me take care of this. That's the CB9 matter. CB9 will handle that administratively. We have very little knowledge in terms
He's
of this
asking the
application or even this
commissioner.
whole process. And the commissioner is speaking with regards to BSA. The question is with regards to CB9's process, how we are going to address the application. As a CB9 chair, I'm answering the question. So after we have done that, we will have an opportunity as a committee and the CB9 office, we will discuss what is the best way to go move forward with regards to assessing the application and what the next steps will be with that.
Well, she's
So
asking
after
when
we've
we'll
made
be
those
able to-
determinations. Ms. Boyd, thank you.
One more, Mr. Baptiste.
when will we be able to view it?
Can I just
We will
I just want
discuss
to
it.
add one thing.
I'm
You
sorry,
have to
Commissioner,
wait
go
for-
ahead.
I just want to say one thing.
Yes.
The board will not calendar the case that you're hearing for a while, just so you know. So the board has not reviewed the case. The application is complete for the community board to start its review process. All the documented informations are there for the community board to start the review process. That doesn't mean the application has been calendared for hearing at the board. It has not been.
No, the hearing hasn't been scheduled, but the application has been forwarded.
Okay,
And
okay.
my
okay.
question is,
All right.
as part of the process, When is it
And
available
that is
to
the
community?
CB9. CB9 will
That's a
address
CB9.
that.
Public
That's a
information?
Okay, that is CB9. We will address that. Okay. Commissioner, I want to thank you so much for coming this evening. Again, I think that this is very helpful for us as a ULURP committee in terms of understanding that process because we don't typically deal with that. And I would definitely, you know, at some point, if it's possible to get on your calendar, I would love to have a similar presentation for the full board so we can understand the BSA process and how that affects the community as well.
Sure. Thank you.
So,
And
Commissioner, thank you so much for your time this evening.
thank you very much for inviting me. Take care. Good night.
Good night. Okay, we are now going to move on in the agenda. We do have a BSA submission with respect to the property on 341-349 Troy Avenue. I hope I got that correct.
Yeah.
We do have a representative for the applicant, Mr. Jay Goldstein. Are you here? You here, sir?
I am. How are you? Good evening.
Doing well, doing well. All right, Mr. Goldstein is going to be speaking with regards to his project, the application, and giving us a little bit of information with respect to that. All right.
If you want
Do
to,
you need do you have a presentation? Do you need
if you want to
screen
make,
share or-
yeah, I'll screen share. That's fine. If you want to make me a host. Okay. Is it working? You can see that? Mr.
Yes.
Baptiste? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Jay Goldstein. I'm here on behalf of Carroll Gardens Realty for an extension of time to complete a project which was previously approved by the Board of Standards and Appeals. So the application before you is for an extension of time to complete the project. The variance was approved in 2010 with modifications in 2013 and 2016. The board approved, this community board and the BSA approved the modifications in June 2013 for a 26 dwelling unit, 32 parking spaces, four-story plus a penthouse building on this property. In March of 2018, we were given additional time. However, due to financial issues and COVID, we require additional time now to commence our project and finish the construction of this approval, which has been approved since 2010. There's no change requested to the approval. The only request that we have of the Board of Standards and Appeals is that they extend the time to complete the construction for 4 years. So the building itself will have, as mentioned, 26 units ranging from 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, and then duplex apartments, larger apartments to accommodate families that are in the neighborhood or want to come to the neighborhood or want to stay in the neighborhood. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on the application. Again, the application was approved in 2010, and the reason we're here today is for an extension of time to complete the application. And as mentioned, we've submitted this to the Board of Standards and Appeals and submitted it to your community board as part of the process. We have not received comments yet from the Board of Standards and Appeals, nor have we been calendared for a hearing yet. So they're doing their review and they'll reach out when they're ready with their questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Okay, Mia, if we can go back to the gallery view and we'll take a speakers list for anybody who has questions.
Mr. Goldstein, you can stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
I have Ms. Boyd, I have Esteban, I have Ms. Barnes, and I have Suki with hands raised for comment or question.
Okay, so you said I heard Ms. Boyd, I heard Esteban Jerome, I heard Ms. Barnes, and who's the last one?
Suki.
I'm sorry, Suki?
And Sharon Wedderburn.
No, Ms. Wedderburn cannot speak. Yes, and we have Ms. Wedderburn as well. Okay, we're going to close on Ms. Wedderburn. Okay, Ms. Boyd.
Because this is such an old application, 2010, and obviously 2013, I wasn't attending. I wanted to be specific about what changes you actually have been granted from what was the previous rezoning. And I would assume that you got an increase in bulk in size. So what was the previous rezoning? That means the zoning that was in 2009. And what is the existing additional bulk and privilege that you are now getting? And what was the hardship that you were claiming you were suffering under to allow you to get that additional bulk and height? Because that, according to the commissioner, is one of the requirements. You have to prove hardship that was not caused by yourself.
So the original approval is not a rezoning, this is a variance. So it's a site-specific approval. It doesn't have anything to do with upzoning or allowing for any increase in bulk. So when we got our approval in March 2010, we were approved for 34 units with 35 parking spaces. In June of 2013, there was no bulk change. The only change was to reduce the number of dwelling units to 26, making it a bigger units with 32 parking spaces.
But you didn't answer my question. I didn't ask you what the original permit was. I asked you what was previously and what were you gaining? Because you have to gain something. What did you gain?
What did I gain between 2010 and 2013? Or what?
2009 and 2010, what did you gain?
The approval allowed for 34 dwelling units with 35 spaces.
What was the previous?
I'm going to, that approval was 48,342 square feet. The allowable is 21,754.
So you got almost a 50% increase in bulk.
Right.
So
it was
you
based on,
thank you.
it was based on environmental hardships and soil hardships, which not only were they whittled away by the board, the original request, which was withdrawn and reduced, was for 77 units based on the hardship. And the board made us reduce that based on they made us focus the hardship or the soil contamination to a specific area of the site, not the whole site. And as a result, we were reduced from 77, which was the original request, to 34 units.
And the hardship was, you said, contamination?
Historical use of the site. Yeah, there was previously were gas stations on this site for years, permitted gas stations. So the contamination of the site was what was the hardship that caused the financial analysis.
And are you going to be doing remediation on that?
Absolutely, in conjunction with OER, the Office of Environmental Remediation.
And will you be allowed to participate in that program where when you do remediation, you actually—
Not a brownfield. No.
Where you get your cement for free?
No, we're not a brownfield application. This is a private application. We'll have to do the OER, which is going to cost a sizable amount of money to do the cleanup and do the environmental remediation and protection for the community.
So you're footing that bill completely?
Okay.
Correct.
I just need to be clear, because I'm sure we will have an application coming back where the city will be footing that bill. So we just want to be clear on the record that they're claiming that they're going to be footing that bill and not the city.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Esteban.
Yeah, I didn't realize this until I saw the picture of the corner there. Is this where a helicopter landed twice last week? Yeah, could you explain that, please?
Oh, wow.
I cannot explain it. All I know is it wasn't my client. Somebody called my client and said, we have FAA approval to do this. Can we use your site? This site has historically been used by the community board when needed it, by the community during the holiday seasons. He said, if you have FAA approval, it's fine with him. I don't, it wasn't him on the helicopter, but yeah, that was a Saturday evening when I turned back on my phone. I had a text message from one of my friends saying, you're in the news.
Yeah, that's apparently, well, actually it looks like they may have actually had FAA approval. They're not quite sure yet, but they did get chased all the way to New Jersey by the
yeah. Again, if you're dropping a helicopter in the middle of Crown Heights, I imagine you have or had or thought you had FAA approval. I don't think anyone's dropping it on this corner and thinking they're going to sneak by.
Can we expect that that's not going to happen again?
I would say so.
Okay.
Especially we want to build a building, so.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Esteban. Ms. Barnes.
Oh, wait, am I unmuted? Yeah. My question was answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barnes. Suki?
Yeah, hi. So Alicia answered, I guess, one of my questions. I was going to ask you whether you had done the environmental remediation that was the basis for your request, but you said you haven't begun that yet.
Right, it'll start now. Upon approval, we'll go into OER and we file with engineers and with environmental experts to get permission for a remedial action plan from OER, which we've done in the past, but it's something that we'll update now. And then work
Okay.
with the city very closely hand in hand to ensure that the excavation, the carting, the vapor barriers and anything that needs to be in place is going to be put in place so that we ensure the safety of the safe cleanup and safety of the neighborhood and tenants.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that
Ms.
original
Weber.
approval,
Oh, I'm sorry.
sorry, Fred.
Go ahead, finish your question.
Approval was, that original approval was more than 10 years ago. Remediation in the
I'm sorry,
last
you broke
10
up.
years, because that's really the first step before
sorry,
any construction,
I'm sorry,
even though I understand.
You broke up in your question. Can you start again?
Yeah, what's the original approval was more than 10 years ago. What is the reason you didn't begin and complete the environmental remediation? Even though I understand construction plans changed in the meantime, but the remediation is the first step before any construction begins.
Remediation is tailored to the building plans. So the approval that we have from BSA is what we would do. So when you start excavation, or right before you're ready to start excavation, that's when you do your remediation. The city doesn't want you to start do excavation to do the remediation and then leave an empty hole. So we were in a position to do the construction. So therefore we didn't start the remediation because that would have led to a hole in the ground and it would have been problematic for the community and problematic for the developer. So
Okay.
the contamination that's there is not an airborne contamination that's leaking into the environment. It's, the soil is called infill soil and has to be removed and carted off. That soil, when it's disturbed, will have to be carted off. But until it's disturbed by excavation, it doesn't have any impact. It's not like an airborne issue.
I mean, again, can you speak to why it's taken so long to begin construction? I mean, I guess 11 years is quite unusual. In this community, we've seen many buildings go up within the space of 1 to 3 years, somewhat to our dismay, but nevertheless, it's typical for it to happen pretty quickly.
So unfortunately, there were a lot of financial issues that resulted after the approval, not as a result of the approval, but in the developer's personal projects, he had financial constraints that didn't allow him to jump into this project. In addition, we did do a number of modifications to the project as time went on to try and see what this community needs, and really every time you go back to BSA, it takes a year for that approval. So even though you get an approval in July of 2016, that started in July of 2015. So things are in the works and you can't really get permits to build a building if you're changing the layouts with BSA.
Okay, and in the sort of the final round of amendments and extensions that you requested, which was in 2018, they said they were giving you until June of 2021, that the approval that they were, the extension they were giving you was contingent on you getting a final certificate of occupancy by June of 2021. And that was back in 2018, but you haven't begun construction yet. What was, I understand the pandemic started in March of 2020, but between June of 2018 and March of 2020.
So he had plans in the works and he had things that were, he was working on the engineering and the mechanical and the HVAC to get it filed. And then the world kind of took a stop. So once it was approved, he did start really planning out the project and getting his ducks in a row. It just didn't happen in time for him to pull the trigger. So at this point, we are asking the board for another 4 years to finish the project. And just a point of reference, in March of 2018, we didn't have any changes to the project. It was mostly just the extension of time. So that started, let's say, in March of 2017, we got approved in 2018, something along those lines.
All right, just to dovetail on that. So this 4-year extension,
thank
does that
you.
mean in terms of, does that mean putting the shovel in the ground, is this expected to be completed in 4 years, or 4 years and then there's still time for the construction?
Our construction timeline is 2 years and 4 months from the day we're approved at BSA, God willing, because we have plans ready to go. We're ready to get in the ground. So based on the DOB permitting and construction timeline with C of O, we think 2 years, 4 months. There's always things that get delayed at DOB on the DOB level. So we're giving ourselves a buffer by asking for the 4 years, but we're hopeful to have this complete before that.
Thank you. And then we're going to close on Ms. Wedderburn. You have the floor.
Thank you. Very simple question. Is this going to be, when the project is completed, are there rentals, or are there condominiums or cooperatives?
So it was initially intended for rentals. If the community, starts asking for condominiums, we'll explore that, but it's rentals at this time.
And are they family-sized apartments, or are they studio and 1-bedrooms?
No, like I said before, these are actually bigger apartments, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms and duplex apartments, so that we can have families and larger families buy into these apartments or rent in these apartments and stay in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
And what is the price range of these apartments?
I don't have that number, but it's market rate. It's not, I don't think he has the number yet, but it's a market rate building.
Whatever that
All right,
means.
Mr. Goldstein. Okay, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Goldstein, thank you very much for coming this evening and giving the presentation. All right, so it sounds like this is a request for an extension. It doesn't sound like you're modifying the project. Looking at some of the paperwork, it looks like some of the statement of facts were revised slightly. But what we will do is, I think there might be some additional questions that the board may have, particularly for BSA, just in terms of process, in terms of if response is required. The committee may need to discuss that as well in terms of if there's additional information that we would need. But otherwise, I guess we'll be in touch. We might have some additional questions. But thank you very much for coming this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.
Okay. All right, so with that, I think that was a lot in terms of between the BSA explanation, plus we now have this application that's in front of us. I do have some additional questions that I think we would want to have answered with respect to what is the role of the board in terms of, we could have a hearing, we could do a recommendation. I'm not sure what is going to be gained or lost in terms of extending it. So I think I kind of want to get an understanding of the nature from that from the BSA. So what I would ask for is that we postpone this. We can bring this back up for the next ULURP meeting. I can come back with the findings and we can share that. And at that time, the committee can discuss what its pleasure is in terms of how it wishes to dispose. Is that acceptable? Okay.
Yes.
All right, very well. Thank you very much. Okay, all right, so we are now moving on to item number 3, the Fenimore Street application update. Now this one is going to be very, very brief. I just wanted to catch up a little bit with the ULURP committee, as this is the rezoning process had started, conversation had started in ULURP. So and just for background for those especially who are newer members. So around 2016, 2017, CB9 was approached by the Fenimore Street Block Association, and it was requested that we become a partner, a co-applicant for a rezoning application. There are some issues over on Fenimore Street where one block of Fenimore Street is part of the historic district, so they are capped out at 2-story homes. Right across the street actually is not, where they are part of an R6. So there were issues with respect to that. They presented before the ULURP committee. The ULURP committee had forwarded a recommendation to become a co-applicant. That went to the full board, and that was approved late 2016, 2017. So ultimately, the decision or the rationale for us to become a co-applicant was if Fenimore Street Block Association had gone in as a private entity, they would have had a number of fees that they would have had to pay out of pocket. Whereas if they partnered with the community city agency, those fees would have been waived. So the understanding was always that CB9 was going to be a silent partner, so to speak, with respect to that. And the request was supposed to be for the down zoning from an R6 to, I believe, an R2. So that had, the paperwork had been submitted around 2017. My understanding were there were some administrative things that happened with Fenimore Street in terms of between whoever they were working with, whoever was handling the administration of the application, and a number of other delays with respect to that. But the application is still live. Fenimore Street had, we had re-engaged with them over the summer to discuss that. The board had already voted to be a partner with that, so we recommitted in terms of, yes, we're going to continue to be the partner. So what they've done is started the process of they've rekindled that conversation where they're speaking with Department of City Planning with respect to that. So in terms of that, the original proposal was for them to become an R2. They are still working on that. There are still some things that they are working on. They are having those conversations. This is a matter that has already been reviewed by ULURP and decided by CB and approved by CB9. So we just wanted to make sure that we caught up with the ULURP committee and advised that, yes, the process is still going. So as we get additional information from either Department of City Planning or Fenimore Street Block Association, we'll definitely provide that to the committee as well. So this is for informational purposes, but if there are any questions, I'll take them at this time. Hold on, I do see, hold on one second. If we could raise hands, Esteban, I do see you.
Nicola as well.
Nicola and Ms. Boyd, I saw you as well.
And Ms. Barnes.
And Ms. Barnes. Nicola, Ms. Boyd, and Ms. Barnes. Okay, Esteban, you have the floor.
Are we represented in these conversations that they're at, like at the board or the committee, or I know we were pretty involved. I was actually on the subcommittee for this when it first happened, but you said they're having conversations with city planning. Like, are we part of those conversations if we're also applicants, or are they doing those separately? Because I think it'd be good to have, you or whoever ends up being chair, or whoever, somebody there. I remember there were like 3 or 4 of us went to like the first big meeting that they had. I feel like that would be good to just, so that we're in the loop, since it is an application that's got the community board's name on it. It would be good to be present. So maybe, I don't know if that's something we can like ask them if they want to like include or whatever, but I think that would be, but also make it easier to report back to the committee if there's, if there's things that come up now in the process. So yeah.
Right. So right now, at least at the very beginning, because they're really kind of rebuilding this application, we are not involved, although we're CC'd on part of those conversations. So we are monitoring from the perspective, myself as chair of the board, and Dante as the district manager, in terms of, so we're making sure that we're CC'd on those. So I think at that stage, that's where we are right now. So if anything materially changes, obviously we'll advise, and if there are meetings that have to happen, we'll make sure the board is represented at that point as well.
And is it the same guy that's doing it? I think his name is Graciano.
No, that was one of the challenges where he's not on the project anymore, and there were just a whole bunch of things they needed to recreate.
Gotcha. All right.
Okay. Ms. Cox.
Hello. I had concerns with the original application, and I have concerns now that there is a revised application that we are co-applicants on, that we are not involved in updating the application. I still think it's a conflict of interest for a community board that is going to be voting on the application to be co-applicants. And from what I remember in our original discussions with city planning, because we are a city agency, we are not a silent partner, we become the lead applicant. And so it's Community Board 9's application with Fenimore as a co-applicant. And I still don't understand how we can have that happen. And especially, I mean, this was years ago that we started the process. We're in a very different space now in terms of the community, the spotlight on this area in terms of rezoning and development. And I think we need to revisit whether or not we should be co-applicants on this application. If they started all over, that means we have the option to opt out. It's not the same application. It's a new planner. They're completely new players, including, I believe, with city planning. So I don't see how we can be held to a decision that was made several years ago with a completely separate board. Separate ULURP committee is very different. And I don't think that we should be held to that decision.
Right, understanding that there were definitely questions with respect to the application, and there was definitely opposition with respect to that as well. However, the application did go through the ULURP. It got a recommendation. It went to the board, and it got a vote from there as well, and it was approved. I would, and in my conversations earlier over the summer, I think my main concern was if this has changed substantively from what was originally voted on, absolutely this would have been a new conversation. My understanding is that it has not changed. So the application, the request is still the same request that was seen before the ULURP committee and approved by the board. As long as we stay under those parameters, I am reluctant to go back and renege on the deal. The board voted on it. Whether we liked it or not, I think the board voted on that. But again, as we go forward, if there is anything material in terms of that changes with respect to that, that does necessitate other conversations where, yeah, perhaps we look at other actions. But as of right now,
again, I don't want this to creep out to suddenly it becomes a community-wide rezoning. And that's always been the concern of putting our name on an application for half of a block. I don't see why the community board is signing up for that.
Understood and duly noted. Okay, Ms. Boyd.
Well, there, I understand that you want to control this committee, Fred, but this is a committee. And so the committee should have the right to make a decision whether or not they want to sit there and withdraw themselves from this application, because you started out saying that there were major changes happening to this application. So I don't know if you have the authority to make a decision for this committee. I think that the committee should put it to a vote whether or not they want to now be a primary applicant on an application that's now going through the Department of City Planning with no one sitting at the table from the community board, and yet you're going to be the primary applicant. Again, as Nicholas stated, it was very clear from the Department of City Planning that it was Community Board 9 that's going to be the primary applicant. So you are a primary applicant on an application. You're not sitting at the meetings. You said that the application is changing, but you want to have the communication with everyone. You don't want anyone else to have that communication. You don't want anyone sitting at those meetings. And if you're the primary applicant on the application, you're supposed to be sitting at those meetings. It's not supposed to be Fenimore. It's supposed to be CB9, and CB9 is not doing that right now. And
okay,
I'm very, excuse me, let me finish, Fred. And I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about that application, because one of the things that application and the applicants were talking about was sitting there doing a quid pro quo, and that they will give up some other part of the community so that they can get this down zoning, because the Department of City Planning has made it very, very clear that they are not just willing to do a down zoning in anyone's community without getting an up zoning somewhere else. And they have talked about up zoning Franklin Avenue, which we just had a fight about and won, upzoning Empire Boulevard, which we just had a fight about, and now you're having this application being pushed by Fenimore, according to you, without any input or anyone from CB9 sitting at the table, even though CB9 is now the primary applicant on the application. I think this committee should rethink that and put a motion on the floor and decide whether or not they want to continue to be the primary application on this application. Just because it was voted does not mean it cannot be unvoted.
Couple of inaccuracies. I did not say that the application has substantially changed or there's major changes. The application is being refiled. There are paperwork that are being resubmitted, but nothing has changed materially from what was considered by this committee and what was voted on by the board. Because it was voted on by the board, it was a board decision. Without it going, unless something substantial comes up where it's like all of a sudden now there's a big difference of agreement between what we voted on originally and what they're actually proceeding with, at that point, absolutely, it's a conversation that comes back and we'll discuss that as a board.
Where's the paperwork, Fred, so that we can see that? Where's the application currently
The
right
paperwork,
now? So that we can see whether or not it has drastically changed.
They are
or it
working.
stayed
They are working with the Department of City Planning to resubmit the paperwork. So
Well, and why
that
is
is
the
the stuff.
community board a part of that conversation and looking at that application? Because you're making claims that you right now don't even know about.
No, because as the chair of the board, I'm involved in the process. The district manager, as the chief administrative officer of the board, is involved in that process. As we get information that needs to be shared with the board.
You shouldn't be the
committee has
only
already-
two that's sitting there having access to
The
the
board
information.
decided. The board decided, and in my
A
capacity as the
previous
chair.
application, they decided. This
Ms. Boyd,
application is now changing.
Ms. Boyd, we're not going to go back and forth. At this time, there is no substantial. When there is something to report, we will bring that back to the board. So
There
that will
seems to be
happen.
something substantial already, because you're saying that they're making changes to an application. So
I
it's
did not say
already
they made changes. I said they're putting the application back together. That is what it said. There are no
Exactly.
changes
If they
as
have a
far
new
as I know.
planner-
To what I have seen, there
if
are
they
no
haven't-
changes that have happened. Yes. And what
They
I'm saying is,
have a new planner. They had obviously the planner was not
Right.
doing, they said it was not effective. They had to stop the process with them
absolutely.
and get someone
and there
else
were
in
parameters.
place.
No,
So
and agreed, and
obviously
there were
there have to be
parameters.
changes.
No. I mean, I think there were changes, or maybe there was. Honestly, I'm not sure what the issues were. I think there might have been issues administratively, how he was handling, if things were submitted or not submitted.
Because
That's on that
if
side.
you remember
But
that
materially-
application, it was blank. There were no details in it.
Thank you.
That was a
No, but what I'm
problem.
saying-
There were
no,
no
no, what I'm
details.
saying is, no, I think, but the board had voted on it in terms of the downsizing from the R6 to the R2. That is consistent from what my conversations I've had with them. That is consistent from my understanding of the application that is being put together. I will have access to that when things have been put together, and I will be signing off on that if necessary. But the idea is, it hasn't come to that point yet, so there is nothing more to report than the process has restarted. So
So
when
you're
there's something
signing
to
off for
report,
something
absolutely.
without anybody else looking. Nobody else is gonna have
Ms.
access.
Boyd, you're having fun here trying to turn things around. I'm saying is there is nothing here to report yet. When there's something to report, it will be reported.
You are reporting something.
Ms.
You're
Barnes.
reporting
Ms. Barnes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Ms. Boyd, thank you.
a
Ms. Barnes,
reintroduction to an
Ms.
application.
Boyd, thank you.
A reintroduction.
Ms. Boyd, thank you. Ms. Boyd, thank you. Ms. Barnes.
Some of you folks, especially the men, need to speak up about the disrespect and cutting off people, especially to women and women of color. First of all, Fred, you did say that the application, there were changes. You said that. I believe this is recorded. You could go back and say there's changes. You're making it very subjective. You are not the end all of everything. The committee should be included. And this is very troublesome. As Nicholas said, the spotlight is on our community. And you're talking about being a primary applicant, which seems to me, what do I know before you cut me off, is a complete conflict of interest. You're supposed to represent the community, not private entities. And this ought to be given to the committee through the process to review. How do you just look at the changes? Where is the application?
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Richard.
Could you answer the question? Where is the application?
You shouldn't
Okay, go
cut
ahead.
her off.
So now
Fred.
you're cutting people off.
No. There is, the answer has already been given. The application is
When
being
are you
put
going
together.
to give it to the public?
Ms. Barnes, when it is available, when it is ripe for discussion,
It
it'll
is
be presented.
available. You
Answer-
saw it
ask
and said
and
there were
answer.
changes.
So
I
you
did
don't,
not- Okay, then
so you haven't seen.
let me
the
correct
changes
myself.
yet,
Ms.
Fred.
Barnes, we're going to do this right now. There are no changes. There will be no changes. If there are substantial changes, they will come back before this board and there will be discussion. Right now, the process is they are putting the application together or reconstructing the application to go before Department
One
of
more
City Planning.
question. Did corporate
No
counsel
more questions,
ever
Ms. Barnes.
review the legality of a community board holding themselves out as primary applicant on an application?
A
The
city
corporate
agency can be a
counsel
primary,
do that.
a city
That's
agency can be a co-applicant.
That
Okay,
is
Ms. Barnes, we're not gonna argue this. We're not gonna argue this. Ms. Barnes, thank you. We're not arguing this.
I don't want to argue. This whole
Richard,
thing
Ms. Barnes, we're not arguing this.
and
Ms.
discussion.
Barnes. Ms. Barnes. Richard,
So,
go ahead.
so based on what I've
Okay.
seen in the last 2 years, Community Board 10 was an applicant for a zoning text change within Community Board 10. So it's been done before. That was the most recent time. But a key thing, even if the board is to be not primary, the word is actually co-applicant. Even if the board is to move ahead as co-applicant, it doesn't mean the community board, when it's time to review a final application, can't take a total position in opposition. The board is totally within its right to vote down the application or modify the application or approve as is. So the board does not forfeit that right, even if its name is on the application. It gets 2 roles, one as applicant and second as reviewer of the applicant.
What we do
Application.
know is that once the
Okay,
Department
Ms. Boyd, Ms. Boyd,
Planning
Ms. Boyd, you have
presents
not
an
been recognized, please.
application,
Ms.
this
Boyd,
community
Ms.
board
Boyd, you have
just
not been
becomes
recognized.
powerless in deciding
Ms.
what happens
Boyd,
to that
you have
application.
not been recognized. Ms. Boyd, please.
So just to finish, the
Powerless,
city council,
powerless, powerless,
city planning is not
powerless,
the
Ms.
final
Boyd,
say.
Ms. Boyd,
powerless.
Ms.
The
Boyd,
city council is the final say.
powerless,
So if
powerless. And how
so
many
you should be
applications have went
influencing
through
your
the Department
future
of City
council members.
Planning?
Ms. Boyd,
The
Ms.
community,
Boyd,
Joseph, your new
Ms.
council
Boyd,
member.
how many applications? How
Ms.
many
Boyd,
applications with Richard
Ms.
Barrett?
Boyd, you are out of
How
order.
many applications?
Ms. Boyd,
You're,
you are out of order. Please refrain.
you're out of order. Sitting there talking about an
Ms.
application
Boyd,
and we're the primary applicant
Ms.
and we're not
Boyd,
even
I
sitting
need
there
you to stop. You are
No,
now
Jack,
interrupting the
you're
meeting.
out of order.
Ms. Boyd, I need you to stop.
Committee.
Ms. Barnes,
out of
don't
order.
follow.
Ladies, please.
Needs to be,
Richard,
somebody needs to
Ms.
put
Boyd, stop.
a motion on the floor.
Richard, are you completed? Ms. Boyd,
Put
you
a
are not
motion on the
recognized.
floor, somebody.
Richard,
Somebody get some guts
Ms.
to put a
Boyd,
motion
you
on
are
the
not
floor to
recognized.
stop this
Richard, are you
nonsense.
finished with your point?
Thank you.
Thank
Motion
you,
on the
Richard.
floor.
No, you have not been recognized, Ms. Barnes, please.
I will never recognize.
And the irony is you want to go and talk about respect in here, and then you want to do this. Stop.
Yeah, you're
Stop it.
being disrespectful,
Stop.
trying to play with us.
So we
When
can
Richard
agree
Ms.
Barrett
Boyd,
talking about we have
you're
some
finding
say.
you out of order for the
I don't
second time. If you do this again,
That's one thing we can agree on. I don't
it
recognize
is now, you have now disrupted the meeting twice. You are being found out of order twice. Please, refrain. Suki, please.
Yeah, I'd like to put a motion on the floor to reconstitute this subcommittee that was addressing the Fenimore Street rezoning, and certainly Fred should be part of it, and Nicola should be part of it if she wants to. And for Fred and Dante to write a letter to the Department of City Planning and to our Fenimore Street co-applicants to let them know, and to let them know that we expect to be included in any future meetings with the Department of City Planning or CC'd on that correspondence. And I think we'll just take it from there.
Okay, hold on. Now the issue is, I am included in the conversations. The district manager is included in the conversations. The motion is premature because they are still putting this together.
She can still put
There
the
will
motion
be-
on the floor. You can't stop
There
her
will
from
be
putting the motion
opportunities.
on the floor.
Ms. Boyd, thank you. There will be opportunities. It's kind of premature because right now they haven't
And
even had the
somebody
opportunity to do
second
the
it?
work and construct. Ms. Boyd, thank you. It's premature right now. The only thing I would ask is hold on, because we have nothing right now to even review. As that process goes forward, absolutely, if there, if it becomes appropriate or necessary, that'll be an opportunity for the board to weigh in if necessary. Okay?
I second the motion. I don't see that there's any problem with us making a vote on whether we should reconstitute a subcommittee that would be more engaged and when the time comes.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. I have seconded by Ms. Cox. Any discussion? Esteban, go ahead.
I just want to, I agree with this reconstituting of the subcommittee. We were really involved in this process, even in the early stages of it. I remember meeting with Kevin Kraft at DCP. I remember we were we're very much involved even in the constituting of the application. So and like it was a long time ago, so it's kind of hard to remember all that stuff, but I think it is important just to keep everything above board, to make sure there's transparency. I think I think at least reconstituting the committee and making ourselves available to the process would be beneficial. I think it'd be beneficial for the board too. I think I think it can't hurt, obviously, to have, you know, more eyes and ears on what's going on. So.
All right, Esteban. Ms. Boyd?
I think it is imperative that this community board and the members of this committee be a part of any discussions that are happening, especially if you are a primary applicant on an application that's going through and having your name on it. We know that the Fenimore application, by the time it was finished, was blank. It had so many addendums that were not a part, that were missing and was supposed to be filled out and was never filled out. And yet this board, with a very narrow vote, approved it. There was one person more on this vote. It was a very controversial rezoning application because a lot of people felt very strongly that CB9 should not be on that application. So for us to now say that we're reinstituting that application when it was originally not full or completed, and then not be sitting at the table to figure out what is being suggested, just seems bizarre. And obviously in this climate where there's rezonings, where we are targeted for rezonings, and we know that once the Department of City Planning finishes whatever they assume is the right plan, we have no power. They come to us and ask us our opinion. It doesn't matter. Our opinion does not matter. And if we have not learned that by all the rezonings that have went on in the city, then we will deserve what we will get. And that would be whatever it is that the Department of City Planning and the developers sitting behind the Department of City Planning decide. So this community board has the responsibility to be sitting at the table and looking at that application every time DCP meets to ensure that this community is protected. So I would hope that all the members of this committee will vote that a subcommittee is created and it immediately is a part of any further discussions with the Fenimore application and sitting down at every meeting that the Fenimore application has with the Department of City Planning.
Suki?
Yeah, I mean, I just do want to say that I do fully trust Fred that, you know, that there's nothing going on right now and that no material changes have happened yet. But I don't think there's anything wrong, as Esteban said, with reconstituting the subcommittee. And if there's no movement as of yet, then, you know, we'll just sit and wait until there is occasion to discuss with city planning. And I think we, you know, I think we can be respectful of the Fenimore Street Block Association applicants because they've really done the majority of the work. And, you know, I think silent partner means we sit and listen and hear what they and DCP have to say. I don't think we, you know, but I think it's good for us to be at the table.
All right. The one comment, and I guess we'll go to the vote for with respect to that. I am not certain of the appropriateness of the vote because I think that, you know, once the recommendation is made by the ULURP, then it goes up to the board and it was a board vote. So I think if there's any motion like that or any oversight that would happen from the board level. And that's where any of the changes would be made. That is something I will look into. We will continue with the process. We will record the vote of the committee and we'll do any investigations as necessary after that point.
Are you trying to say that the committee cannot sit there and create a subcommittee, Fred?
I'm saying is we're doing a subcommittee on a matter that's already been decided by the board, and it might be the purview of the full board to actually have that done.
No, it's a subcommittee that's just reviewing. Fred is
right, and what it's a board action. And what I'm trying to say is it's a board action.
Look at you, Fred. Look at you, Fred.
Ms. Boyd, thank you.
Look at yourself.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Thank you. All right, at this time we will call the roll. Well, actually, I think we can do it by, well, no, actually, let's call the roll then.
Fred, I'm sorry, this is Lorianne Wolf. You had called me earlier some reason, my computer wasn't picking up my audio, so I called in. But I've been on the phone from the start of the meeting. Okay.
Oh, okay, no problem. We have you listed as being present then. Thank you. All right, so at this time, we are going to call the roll. So when I call your name, please give me your vote, yay in favor of the motion or nay. Suki Chang,
Yes.
I'm sorry? Yes, okay. Felice Robertson,
Yes.
Lorianne Wolseley,
Yes.
Nicola Cox,
Yes.
John Craver, he's still absent. Esteban Jerome,
Yes.
and Thomas.
No.
Okay, I record 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes in favor, 1 vote against. Are there any abstentions? To make sure. Okay, seeing none, the motion carries. The motion will be carried to the executive committee for consideration on the, I can't remember the date right off of that, but that'll be carried to the executive committee for consideration. Like I said, I think I have some technical questions that I will try and also see if I get clarification on as well. Okay, so that's Fenimore. All right, moving on to item number 4, I believe on the agenda, priorities and expectations.
I tell you.
So, first of all, I want to say that this has definitely been one of the strong committees. I've been very proud of the way that, of the expertise that's here, the professionalism, the consideration, and the thoughtfulness of the conversations that happens here. And I think that all I would want is for that to continue. I think this is a conversation that I've had with a number of the other committees as well. It's probably preaching to the choir here as well, but I definitely respect and appreciate the sacrifices you make to be here. You were on this committee because you truly believe in serving our district. And with that being said, I want to make sure that we're respectful of that, of your time, of your talent, and your energy. The only thing I ask is that we make sure that we communicate. If you are able to make it, if you are not able to make it, to just please make sure you communicate that to the district office. We understand life happens. So the only thing I would ask is to make sure that, we'll do our best to make sure that we get schedules out in advance, that you have the materials you need to have. And if anything happens, please let the district office know, and we will always work to accommodate you to the best of our ability as well. Yeah, we mentioned it, I think just as a norm, one of the norms we're trying to establish as a board as well is that when we do come onto these meetings, sometimes we have visitors, sometimes we have people coming in for the first time, and it's always a good idea to get people oriented at least by understanding who's on the calls, and being able to readily identify if you're members of the board, if you're on the committee specifically. So we would ask that anytime you do log on, if you just make sure, very similar as you've done today, just make sure you put your name on, as well as your affiliation to the committee as well, just so that way we can look and go ahead and just see that everybody's here. Particularly for the board members, again, preaching to the choir, you're here. I just ask that we make sure that you're attending both the board meetings and the committee meetings. We are monitoring that. I think in the past, we really paid attention to the board attendance. We are making a concerted effort to make sure we're watching the committee attendance as well. So we're just asking you to make sure that you're making sure you're diligent in that respect as well. Now, with regards to some of the priorities of the committee, that is something that I leave open for the committee to think about, at least for the next month or so, in terms of coming back to establish. I think our agenda was very, very much dominated for last year and some change with respect to 960. However, I guess the challenge that I put out to the committee is to think of other ways in terms of we need to be addressing land use within the district. I think this is the clearinghouse. This is the place to have those conversations. I think sometimes one of the things we lament is that we're reactive as opposed to being proactive. So I think that absolutely this is the space to have those proactive conversations as well. So if there are agenda items or if there are things that you would like to see discussed or projects that you'd like to see initiated as part of the ULURP, I would just ask that we can start that that conversation in terms of as we decide on the agenda for the rest of the year, and you bring those ideas to the next meeting. So that way we can solidify those and make sure we put up action plans to make sure we can get things done as a ULURP committee. What else do I have? I think the other thing is as well, I was very, very pleased with the district office team in terms of being proactive and bringing the Board of Standard and Appeals here. That is typically not an agency we work with a lot. And we look forward to opportunities as well to bring other entities like that who might have influence in the sphere of land use. So if, as we brainstorm, if we come up with ideas of other partners or other things that we would want to bring in, please let us know. Very similar to the way they gave a presentation. I think it's very productive, and it's very helpful for us to actually level set and make sure we have a certain level of understanding in terms of city processes and how things work and how zoning regulations work within the district. At this time, I will take any questions or if there's any comments as well. Okay, Esteban, I see your hand. Suki, I see your hand. Okay, go ahead, Esteban.
Sorry, I forgot to take my hand down before. No comments.
Okay. Okay, Suki, so your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you all some of the results from the 2020 census, because this was something that we had talked about in connection with planning before. Can I share my screen?
Mia, is that possible?
Or drop something in the chat. I just want to share the link to the planning website tool, which it's very nice, actually. It's a new tool.
You can share your screen.
Okay. So this is a new tool that was put out by the Department of City Planning to help you analyze the census data. And there's actually a map that you can click on different census tracts or community districts and look at data from 2010, from 2020, as well as the change in the data. And it shows you, right now the data that's available is change in population, change in demographics, I think race, age, and also the number of housing units and the number of vacant units. So if I go, you can see I can highlight Community District 9, and then we can click on View Data. And I guess while it's loading, I'll just say that we did have a small increase in population. I think it was about 3.6%. And if I go here to change over time, that's where you're really going to see what's interesting. The big change here is really in demographics, which I think was something that many people had expected. And we also have an increase in the number of vacant housing units. It's not from 1,854 in 2010 to 2,324 in 2020. Gosh.
That is a stunning loss of Black and African American households, like stunning.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, Suki. And I think that speaks to one of the ideas that perhaps, we flesh it out a little bit in terms of how it would look in the ULURP context. But absolutely, I think that one of the things that we saw from the discussion around 960 is what exactly does our district look like? How many 3-bedroom apartments do we have? How many 2-bedroom apartments do we have? What do the demographics look like? Should we be building more studio apartments, or do we really look like, okay, well, listen, no, we need 2 and 3-bedroom apartments? Those are going to be the kinds of conversations where I think if we're proactive about it, we develop the wants and the needs for the district in terms of, we say, listen, if you're going to have a conversation, these are the wants and the needs. So if you come up with plans, it's not necessarily something we're looking at, again, studio apartments or 1-bedrooms. We want to better understand what the mix is in the district, where the distribution is, where the density is. So that way, as we're going forward, we're having informed and intelligent conversations with it. And we can say specifically, these are what the wants and needs of the district are. Not that I'm going to figure it out tonight. We won't figure it out over the next couple of months, but I think it's worth putting it out there as perhaps maybe that's a conversation we start. And perhaps we can start figuring out how do we put that into plan in terms of how do we create a profile for our own district and identify what resources we want as part of that. Again, this is just part of the brainstorming, but I'm, again, preaching to the choir. I think everyone here is intelligent and expert at this time, and I'm looking forward to see what ideas come out from the committee. I'll proceed. Were there any other comments? I'm sorry, Ms. Boyd, yes.
You know what really is so disturbing about you, Fred, is the fact that every time you talk about what you see and what you are experiencing and all the great work that you have seen, when it comes to actions, you don't follow that. Your committee just sat there and decided to do a subcommittee to be a part of a conversation about a possible rezoning in their community. And instead of you embracing that, oh, we have to take it to the executive committee, when the bylaws allow a committee to create a subcommittee without going to the executive board. You don't have to bring it to the general board. Subcommittees are made up of a committee. If a committee wants to make a subcommittee, they make a subcommittee. That's how they do it. It does not go to get approval from the executive board, and it does not get approval from the general board. Just look at your bylaws. But instead, you want to put up roadblocks because you don't want us sitting at the table when DCP is having a discussion with Fenimore. You don't want anyone to know except you and Dante. And then when I file a freedom of information, I'll get, oh, it's not ready, and oh, you got to wait 20 days or 30 days or 50 days before we get the information. You're not being forthcoming, Fred. You are not, and people can see it. You think that people can't see it because you run your mouth, but people can see how you're siding with developers and allowing our community to be vulnerable again. We fought like hell to stop 960, not you, Fred. You didn't do anything. We fought like hell to sit there and stop 960 from happening. And now you're about to sit there and stop us from at least participating and seeing what Fenimore is planning on doing. Knowing that Fenimore had direct instructions that in order for them to get a down zoning, they had to give up some other part of this community for upzoning. But you refuse. Now you are going to, with your intellect, oh, I have to figure it out to see if you can make a subcommittee. Now, any other committee makes subcommittees and they don't have to have, but we have to go through the executive committee, which is going to side with Fred. Oh, no, we don't want a subcommittee for that because we are. And then you go to the general board. Oh, no, because you don't want us. Because you got your own selfish motives. You got your own political agenda. You're only thinking about yourself, Fred. You're only thinking about what it is that you can accomplish with your personal goals, what your personal aspirations are, and where you think you are going to go off of the backs of our community, off of the backs of our children, off of the backs of our mothers, after the backs of our elders and seniors. That's all you think about, Fred. And you go to church on Sunday and then pray to your Lord. But you come to these meetings knowing what you're doing. You know what they're doing at the Department of City Planning. You know that the Department of City Planning has told every community in New York City, we are not downzoning anything unless you give us an upzoning. This is what the Department of City Planning came and told us, and it told everybody else. You got Soho, NoHo fighting like hell right now, one of the richest communities in New York City. And they told them, you can't get anything unless you do an upzoning. And that's what they did. Now you got Richard Barat coming in here talking about, oh, but you have the right to reject the project when it sits there and comes to us. And you know damn well, nothing happens with that. Once the Department of City Planning certifies an application, it is a done deal. And you don't even want to sitting at the table to figure out what it is that they're planning. That you want to now, oh, I got to check to see if, oh, wait a minute, I got to check to see if you can do a subcommittee. Now, I've been on this board. And when I say I've been on this board, I've been attending the meetings on this board since 2014. And I've watched subcommittees be created by every committee in this board. And never once do they have to go to the executive board in order for approval. It gets done in-house. Julia right here will testify to that. She's a part of the Parks Committee. The Parks Committee decided to do a subcommittee. They didn't have to go to the executive board to get permission, but all of a sudden now, you got an application that's sitting at the Department of City Planning, and that's dangerous because we know the Department of City Planning is not our friends. They have not been friends to any community, black or white. You got an application sitting there and you don't want us to sit there with it. You were talking about you are going to have the information. You and Dante are going to have the information as if we can trust you. Well, maybe Suki trusts you, but we don't want trust. We want to see evidence. We want to see the documents. We want to sit at the table. We don't want to have to trust anybody in this community. These are our homes. These are our families. These are our children. These are our grandmothers. These are everybody to us. This is our life here. We don't want to trust it to one person who has an ulterior motive to move up in the world off of our backs. We don't want to trust you, Fred. What we want to do is we want to see and be a part of the process. We want to see the documents, Fred. We want to sit at the table, Fred.
We have to move on.
And we want you to stop undermining all of the efforts of this committee to sit there and do that.
Okay, Ms. Boyd, thank you very much. Ms. Bryant.
I just want to reiterate the fact that if we wait for subcommittees to be approved, the timetable will continue to go past us. And one of the things that I've discovered, and for transparency, I am not on this committee, but when I heard that the Fenimore project was up, I just want to remind everyone that the timetables start going. And if we have subcommittees that have to be approved by committees after committees, timetables still don't wait for us. Department of City Planning has not been our friend. I mean, I want to reiterate that. It's not been our friend. And I just want to make sure that there's a level of transparency. Fred, I hear what you're saying, that you are a reasonable person. I'm going to take you at your word for it. Why don't you give us the benefit of the doubt by allowing us to see it? I mean, it's like, what kind of person would do a deal if they don't get to see the paper? We know for a fact, and I saw the Fenimore papers that were, they weren't filled in. That's putting our name to a contract where there are blank parts to it. I'm going to end there, but just keep that in mind, that you're letting us put our name on a contract, on an application, and there are blank spaces. That could be anything. And as we know, it has been anything.
Thank you for your comments. Duly noted. Duly noted, absolutely. Okay, all right. With that being said, again, I just want to leave it with the committee in terms of a lot of brain power, a lot of talent, and I just want to make sure that as we turn to. So now that 960 is not it, I want to see how else we can be proactive. I want us to be proactive as a board in terms of figuring out what it is in the best interest of our district. It's better for us to say what we want as opposed to be dictated to us later on.
Proactive is
so
being
next-
able to sit at the table when it
Ms.
was
Boyd,
going
Ms.
to
Boyd,
be
Ms. Boyd, Ms. Boyd, Ms. Boyd, Ms. Boyd. Thank
That's
you.
proactive.
Ms. Boyd, thank you.
That's proactive.
Ms. Boyd, oh. Okay, at this time, we're up to item 5. Is there any new business that the committee needs to discuss at this time?
Where's the chair?
In the beginning of the meeting, I said I had not appointed a chair as yet. I'm looking hopefully to make the decision as soon as possible. As soon as that is done, that'll be
Because
announced.
it's unlawful for you to be chair of this committee.
That
It's a
is inaccurate. We've
violation.
had this conversation before. That is inaccurate. That is inaccurate.
No, you better look at your bylaws.
Inaccurate. I will. I have. How about that? But anyway, is there any new, Ms. Westerdahl?
In control of the ULURP
Ms.
committee.
Boyd,
as
Ms.
chair.
Boyd, Ms. Boyd, Ms.
Ms.
Boyd.
Boyd, we have 2 people with questions up. One moment, please.
Thank you. Ms. Wester, I saw Ms. Westerdahl. Ms. Nicola, did you have a
I'm
question
here.
as well, or?
Yes, I do. I brought up earlier this year about the tax liens. And I sent a message and I was hoping it would be on the agenda, but it wasn't. And I was in the other committee meeting. So I popped in to ask about the tax liens, if ULURP was going to do anything about that. Do you know what I'm talking
That is
about?
actually
I sent you an email. Did you see it?
No, I saw that. I saw that it was just before the meeting. I didn't have an opportunity to respond. That's going to be addressed through housing. The housing committee is going to be taking that up.
Oh, because earlier, I believe you told me that it would be for ULURP. Maybe it was Dante. I don't remember, but one of you said it would be a ULURP thing, land use. So I guess it's
Not
not.
likely. In terms of that, would probably more likely, it's probably best to fit under housing. And it was something that was mentioned as one of the items that will probably take up at the last housing committee meeting. So that'll probably be, that'll end up on that agenda.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Nicola, I saw a hand. Did you have a question or that was from before?
I wanted to make sure that Teresa's question was raised. I wasn't sure if she had made it into the meeting.
Understood.
So,
okay.
Thank you, Nicola.
Okay.
So housing
All
is
right,
going to take it up for sure?
Yeah, that's going to be on the housing agenda. That was discussed. That was actually one of the items discussed.
Ooh.
So as they formalize their agenda for the year, that is definitely one of the activities they're looking at as part of the housing liens, the tax liens.
That's a really time sensitive thing. So I don't want to wait on it because I'm worried about people losing their homes. It's a big deal.
It's on there. Understood? No, it's absolutely a big deal. It's on the housing agenda. It will be addressed there.
Can we move it to, can we talk about it at bring it up at the general board meeting as well? So people that are in attendance, and can you please post it on the email list that you send out monthly?
The tax lien list.
I don't know. I think we should hang flyers and go to people's houses. It's really, I'm very concerned. You know, I don't want people losing their homes.
The tax lien list, I'll talk to the district office in terms of what they can do with respect to that. The action plan in terms of if there's any communication or outreach, how they do that. That's something I would, I was very interested in that as well, in terms of I want the housing committee to take ownership of that and help develop the plan.
But it's going to be so long before their meeting next, and they don't even have a.
Fred, the deadline for it is 12/13, right?
It's really soon. Yes, it's
12.
It's like that.
So
Yeah, ladies, very quickly, I can circulate some information for you for some information for workshops you can share with your neighbors, residents that you know that may be in jeopardy, that the Department of Finance and DEP are holding for no money down payment plans for homeowners who are currently in jeopardy and on the tax lien list. Okay, so feel free to
Will you
contact the
send it to
office.
us
All right.
personally?
Well,
Yeah,
then
I'll
let me
send it
do-
to you tomorrow
well, then let
morning.
me. Yeah,
I'm
okay,
really
so then
worried
let me do
about
this
people.
as
You
well.
know, I have a friend who lost his house in
No,
a very similar
understood. No, no.
situation. He didn't
Yeah,
understand.
absolutely
Yeah, I
understood.
don't really want
So
a
especially
workshop
with
or
that
anything.
information, understood. With that information, I will talk with the district office team to see what we can put together immediately. And given the time sensitivity, then perhaps we don't wait for housing. I will see if it's something I can bring up in exec, if there's something immediately we can do. It will be discussed by exec and by the board meeting this month, but we'll see what plans we can develop with respect to that. We're going to take that up, though. We're going to take it up.
Yeah, it needs to be more than just like emails. Like the people that lose their houses are the
Understood.
people
Yeah.
that aren't on
Understood.
email that are.
Understood. We're going to see what we can do immediately from the district office team, and then from the executive standpoint, will be an agenda item. We'll see what we can do, what we can do in terms of a hardcore press in terms of putting that up. We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll
please let me know because I can't go to all those people's houses, It's a lot of houses.
No, we'll definitely be kept in the loop, and we'll probably be reaching out to people as well in terms of trying to make sure that we can get this information out. Okay. All right. Was there anything else for new business? All right. Seeing none. Well, actually, no.
By next week? By next meeting?
I will see. I need to evaluate. I'll see what the situation is. If I can appoint one by next meeting, absolutely. If not, if we need some more time, we'll pursue
We'll
that
have
as
you
we-
again as chair, so you're chairing both the housing and the ULURP committee?
We will see. I don't know yet. It may be me. It may be another executive committee member. We'll see at that time if the decision hasn't been made. But there will be a chair. Somebody will be chairing this meeting. Okay. All right, then. I do see it's 4 minutes to 9. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Again, I want to thank everyone. I think this is a full agenda. I think this is a lively conversation, a healthy conversation.
Yeah.
And this is really the spirit in terms of, listen, it's not always about agreement. It's about putting the ideas on the floor. It's about discussing. We come to votes and we come to actions afterwards.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to additional conversations and actions from this committee. Thank you. Additional actions and initiatives coming from this committee as well. I thank everyone. Everyone take care. As we will probably not meet, I want everyone to have a happy holiday. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Elise Robinson, make a motion to adjourn.
By law, they had to notify us that they were starting the Fenimore application all over again. And that's what this
Okay.
is. This is a notification by law.
Moved by, if you could please mute your mic. Moved by Ms. Robertson. Did I have a second?
I.e. why
Yes, okay.
Barack is here.
Right. Always the tip off.
And was there a second? I'm sorry.
Second.
Listen.
Lori
all
Ann
the
Wolfe.
talk.
Nicholas seconds.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Woolsey. All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Hearing majority, we stand
Working for
adjourned.
developers.
The time is now
Working for
8:57.
developers. Working for developers.
And you have a great night, Ms. Boyd.
Working for developers.
Have a great